Thank you, Brett. Thank you all for coming again. I'm going to start by getting real with all you people. All of us in this room have something in common. And it's not because we're all attending the greatest lunch and learn ever. Woo-hoo. It's because we've all been, at least most of us have been on a bad date, right? Let's see a show of hands. Who in here has had a bad date? I know more than okay, good. I know some of you are bashful. Why was the date bad? How about all he did was talk about himself? Or all she did, she didn't listen to a single word I said. The bottom line is there was no connection. And in relationships, like marketing, it's all about making a connection and having that engagement in your relationship. And the key to it is knowing the right things to say and knowing when to listen to your audience. So that's what we're talking about here with Listen First Marketing. And we're going to show you some great tips on how you can improve your existing marketing strategies with a little bit of Listen First added in. And by the time you walk out of here, we're all going to be Listen First pros. So we'll get started here with a little quote from Neil Patel. If you haven't heard of him, he's a very prolific content marketer. And he says, knowing your audience is the starting point for any successful content marketing initiative. And it's really true. It's really where it all begins. There's so much out there that's being created for the sake of creating without really knowing what people want to hear from you and what types of conversations people are having out there, maybe about you or about the things you're interested in. So that's really a strong case for what we're talking about here. Who are we? I'll give a little introductions. My name is Jeff Doubek. I'm the Senior Content Strategist here at Liquid, and I am the voice here. I do worry about the words. You'll also hear from Emily Massaro, who is the digital strategist here, and she is really the ears. So between the mouth and the ears, you're going to get a lot of great tips about what we do here at Liquid and what we recommend you do in your businesses for Listen First Marketing. What are we going to learn today? Here's what you're going to learn. First, we're going to go through the listening phase, which is phase 1, and we're going to talk about ways you can use media monitoring to find out, like I said earlier, what people are talking about that's of interest to you and your business. And you're going to find out what types of things they're interested in you saying to them to help them solve their problems. Next, we're going to go into the creation phase. This is where I'm going to take over, and we're going to talk about what types of content is going to ideally suit the people and the conversations that you're looking to get involved with for your business. Next, we're going to go into the distribution phase, which again, I'll give you some tips, but this is going to be much more handled in the next Lunch and Learn, as Brett introduced earlier. Along with that, the analysis phase, which Emily will handle. And that too, we're going to give you some good tips and takeaways, but we're also going to give a nice lead into our next Lunch and Learn. So that's really what our Lunch and Learn's about today. And with that, I'm going to introduce Emily and have her start us off.
All right. So, as Mom always said, there's lots of fish in the sea. So, in 1 hour, all of this conversation is happening online. It's happening about you, about your products and services, about your industry, and it's happening on social media channels, in editorial content, in comment sections, forums, blogs. It's happening whether you're listening to it or not. And you may hear a small percentage of it. Maybe you were tagged in a social post, in which someone said something about your product. Maybe one of your employees shared an article with you that was about your company. But to make smarter marketing decisions, you really need to make sure that you're listening. So this is done through a process called media monitoring. So what this is listening to conversation online. You're monitoring the use of specific keywords that are important to you and your company. So you can use a number of different tools. You can kind of get started with a Google search. There's search functions within different social media channels, different monitoring tools. And then based on what you find, you're able to decide what type of content you're going to create, what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, when you're going to say it. as we showed you, there's a lot of conversation happening online, and before you dive in, you want to make sure that you have a plan. You need to have a focus for your listening and kind of decide what your goals are. And so in a similar way, first dates can be a little nerve-wracking, and so kind of having some get-to-know-you questions prepped can really help move things along. So we're going to talk a little bit about some opportunities for monitoring, show you, kind of some of these different opportunities and a couple examples. Reputation management. What is your reputation online? What are people saying about you, your products or services, maybe the customer service that you provide? 67% of shoppers say that they seek out family or friends' recommendations online through platforms maybe like Facebook before making a purchase. And believe it or not, this percentage actually increases when you're talking about B2B buyers. So positive reviews of your product go a long way. You need to make sure that you're aware of and are acknowledging all of those thumbs up that you receive. So it's easy to see reviews of your product when people post them on your website, maybe on a product page. If someone tags you in a tweet, you'll receive a notification and can respond, whatever way you choose. But what about when you're not tagged in a post? Media monitoring allows you to find those mentions, kind of acknowledge them, respond accordingly, but then analyze that, along with the mentions that you were tagged in. So an example of this would be one of our clients, Moody's Mega Math Challenge. So it's a math competition for high school students, a national competition in which the winners receive scholarship money. So we worked with them this year to do a digital marketing campaign to drive registrations, and knowing that high school students are one of their main target audiences, really recommended that they get a little more aggressive on social media. A lot of their audience members didn't even know that they had accounts or were trying to use this branded hashtag. So what monitoring did as part of our larger digital marketing campaign was allowed me to notify the client when they were mentioned. And this here is an example of a post they weren't even tagged in. They were able to respond and engage with anybody who was talking about the competition, and kind of in the end reach out to some new users. So it's a great example of reputation management and then proactively being able to engage with a positive post or comment. So by 2020, it's predicted that 90% of customer service is going to be handled on social media. So again, it's hard to handle that that customer service there, if you don't have a way of monitoring when your brand's mentioned. So, we do sentiment analysis to find pain points for clients. Is there opportunity to improve your product or your service, or maybe even the way that you're marketing it, by paying attention to those posts or comments with negative sentiment. We can also help find opportunities to help people use your product or service better. Maybe you can create some educational content, how-tos based on what you're seeing. So maybe you'd rather turn your attention to your competitors. So 2/3 of shoppers conduct research before buying, and on average they'll visit a minimum of 3 companies' websites or social media accounts before hitting that Buy Now button. So you need to have a clear picture of what you're up against when it comes to your competition. And so you can conduct searches with media monitoring that are really specific to your competitors. Did they make a recent announcement? Are they running a campaign right now that you should be aware of? We do share a voice analysis for clients so they can get an idea of the volume of conversation that's happening online about their competitors versus themselves. This is something that we did for a client, Cigars International, and then some of the other against some of the major cigar brands, and it provided insight just into the volume of conversation that was happening, but then we're able to kind of take a deeper dive. So maybe why were there more mentions of JR cigars online than our client Cigars International? We saw that there was a lot of integration between their mobile app and auto-generating different social media posts. So that's really a lot of the conversation we were seeing. Maybe it was an opportunity for Cigars International to do something similar, and that was some additional value we were able to share. So, maybe you want to see who's talking about your company or your industry who has influence online. 90% of consumers trust peer recommendations, and 74% of consumers rely on social media to inform purchasing decisions. And only 33% of consumers will admit to trusting ads. So when you're kind of thinking about those first two statistics, you can see why people follow influencers online, especially on social media, whether it's a healthy eating blog or maybe a thought leader in the manufacturing industry. So that kind of brings me to a point. You don't need to necessarily have a Kardashian with millions of Instagram followers talking about your product or service. There's influencers in every industry. It could be a tech blogger who receives a few hundred hits on their site, maybe a restaurant reviewer with a few thousand engaged Twitter followers. But someone that's relevant to you and has influence is somebody worth engaging with. So Village Voice has an annual tasting event called Choice Eats in New York City, and when we were working with them, we analyzed conversation around the event that just happened this past spring, to make recommendations for next year. And so we saw there was a lot of Instagram activity that was from some influencers, maybe food bloggers that had really large Instagram followings, but it wasn't anybody that Choice Eats was really engaging with on Instagram. So, we were able to kind of make that recommendation, look at all of these accounts that, are sharing posts, maybe even tagging you, can you engage with them, maybe even give them some direction about how to talk about the event, maybe if there's a hashtag you'd like them to use, make that be known. So social media, since its development, has been a place for people to interact with one another. And so, as a business, you need to be interacting with potential customers, on these social channels, whether you are a B2C or a B2B, company. So you need to make sure, though, that the posts that you're sharing it's like the right content that your customers are looking for. It needs to be relevant and timely. You want to think about the ways, what channels your customers are on, and what they use those channels for, what they'll be looking for if they're going to follow you. With the M3 challenge, one of their main target audiences was parents, asking parents to make their students aware of the challenge, trying to encourage them to register. Hey, you can win scholarship money. So, I'm sure you've seen this yourselves, maybe not even had to do monitoring. There's lots of parents humble bragging on social media. Just they're getting excited about their student participating in an upcoming competition or maybe winning first place, this past weekend in their soccer tournament. So we recommended really targeting parents with social posts. We saw a lot of this activity happening on Facebook, and some other social channels. So we recommended that the M3 challenge sort of encouraged parents to humble brag, but really in relation to the challenge. So they began putting out posts similar to this that received a lot of engagement. Did your child register? Are they excited about this weekend's competition? And it was just based on what we had heard through media monitoring. Similarly, we were able to alert the M3 challenge of different trending hashtags that would be relevant to them, and so they were able to join conversations that were happening and again, that were really timely. And lastly, and this is a really huge opportunity when it comes to media monitoring, is developing a content strategy. So maybe you have a website redesign coming up, or you're just really looking to improve your content marketing efforts. Maybe you're starting a blog, and listening can inform a lot of decisions that you're going to make. So you can get insight into keywords and key phrases that are frequently associated with your brand or your products or services, and that becomes something that you can associate together in the content you're putting out. And I'll share an example of that in a minute. And another opportunity is just identifying holes in existing content, whether it's what's on your website already or just on the internet in general that you can fill. So are people asking for more information about a specific topic, or are there some frequently asked questions that you can provide answers for on your site? All things you can find. In doing monitoring for Cigars International, we noticed that cigars and burgers were really a classic pairing that people were referencing online. So kind of keeping that in mind, that their target audience would happily consume content related to that pairing, we made recommendations such as, maybe writing blog posts with, their employees' favorite burger recipes, or maybe creating, a cigar and burger pairing at one of their physical locations. And so it was a great example of a content idea that came from listening. This is an example that Jeff has always shares with us, that this is Scott's Lawn Care, and their blog is called Their Lawn Library. And so when you're creating your content strategy, you really want to keep in mind that sometimes for consumers, it's not about buying your product, but instead buying your approach into solving their problem. And that's really where a lot of thought leadership content comes into play. And so, they were showing their approach to solving some of their customers' biggest problems. In this case, trying to keep your lawn nice, but also, keeping your puppy happy. So, you can bet that sharing that this expertise really led to sales for Scott's Lawn Care. All right, so now that you know what you're setting out to accomplish, I want to talk you through sort of just the process of media monitoring. And so really want to share some tips and tricks here as well. If you really want to sweep your data off your feet, I want to keep some of these things in mind. So first, you just want to think about what your goals are, and we just kind of ran through some opportunities for listening, whether it's reputation management, keeping an eye on competitors, etc. So, our first dating tip here would be don't try to squeeze too many activities into one date. And so, it's okay to have multiple goals or focuses of your monitoring is kind of how this translates. But you want to make sure that you stay organized. So, if you're interested in mentions of your own company, but also your competitors, make sure that you create different sort of like keyword searches and keep your searches separate so that you can, just stay focused and then analyze sort of what you're finding separately. Dating tip number 2, just be you. So you're not going to talk or act any differently on your date. And people, especially on social media, are going to be commenting and posting the way that they just talk regularly in everyday life. So when you're, doing your monitoring, you're doing social listening, you want to keep that in mind. So search, just the way people talk. Maybe they might misspell the name of your company, use different tenses. They really probably won't, tag you specifically in some of the posts, and so maybe exclude the @ symbol when you're searching for your company name. So just some things to keep in mind. The second major consideration is where you're going to listen, and so you want to decide which channels you're most interested in listening to. And so this is really dependent, again, on your audience, where they're at, what your goals are. Dating tip number 3 would be don't bring up your dating history on that first date. Kind of how this would translate. A Google search is a really great way to get started, doing media monitoring. But you really don't want your search history to skew any of your results moving forward. So, if you're in a browser like Google Chrome, you can open up an incognito window, just so none of that, your results, again, are skewed by your search history. And then the last thing you really want to think about is what's the time frame. So you want to consider the period of time that you're searching. And I think a lot of times people think about media monitoring or social listening, in real time. What are people saying right now? But there's really opportunity to learn from your past dating mistakes. Are you running an annual event? Are you headed to a trade show this year and you're maybe interested in figuring out what you're about to, what the event's like, maybe what materials you should bring. You can really focus your search into a period of time last year, maybe around when that event was, and then based on what you learn, make decisions, for moving forward. So, all right, you got some tips in your back pocket, and you asked her the right get-to-know-you questions, and now it's time for you to do some talking. I'll pass it back over to Jeff.
We're in the number 2 phase of this cycle, which is the creation phase, and how you create your information. I know creating content is a struggle for a lot of companies, and you want to be able to get the best ROI for what you do and your efforts you spend. So begin with what to say, and again, it really depends on how the date is going, and what I mean by that is where are your customers at? When you're finding these conversations online, what types of conversations are they having? And this sort of defines what type of customer you're looking at. In front of you, you'll see I put a little worksheet on the table, this one. And please take this home and think about the things we learned here today and maybe fill it out for yourselves. But we'll walk through it right now. It begins with the awareness cycle. And when you're in the awareness stage, people are out there talking about the things that are interested or that refer to your brand, but they don't know your brand yet. They're just talking in your area, so they want to know more information, and maybe they're asking questions about how they can solve a problem. So there are some great types of content you can use to solve these problems for these people. Social media posts, articles in your blog, infographics are a great way to go too. So really focus content in those areas that address these initial problems. Next, you get to the research stage, and this is where people are talking and they know they're interested in a brand like yours, and they're asking questions and they want to know which type of solution is going to suit their needs. And they may be aware of your brand and they want to know what features and benefits you offer that is going to be of value to them. This is really where your unique selling proposition comes into play. And so at this point, you can use social media and other types of content that'll educate people on how you can help them, on ways your brand will reach out and solve their problems and be the best use of their time and money. Next, you get to consideration stage, and they're at the buying point. They're ready to pull the trigger, and they want to know which product you have, which is best for them. They want to know what direction they should go. So you need to really reinforce their decision. You should guide them through. You're going to bring assets like downloadable checklists that people would like to help them figure out which is the best product. You're going to bring guides, FAQs. Video is a great way to introduce aspects of your product that just couldn't come out, or solution that just couldn't come out in an article. So please consider that. Next is conversion. They've bought the product. They've bought into your system. They just want to know how to maximize the use of the money they spent. So you need to really offer up some tips. You need to give them the most value. If you've bought a piece of software, you want to know how to use it in your business to get the most out of it. You don't want to just be using 20% of its value. You want to be using all of it. So think about things you can use to fulfill that stage. Email series to existing customers, offering tips once a week or once a month. Videos that offer product support. Exclusive articles and guides that just you can target to the people who have bought your product. And webinars are a great solution if you're able to go that route. And finally, there's the retention stage. And this is where your customers they're already customers, they've bought into you, they've had a good date with you, but you want them to keep coming back. So you have to offer them content that's going to directly refer to them in that stage of their engagement. You want them to be loyal, so you're going to give them some exclusive deals. You might put some offers out on social media. You might give them some incentives that you can mail to them, coupons. And you could also offer them some surveys for feedback because your customer really loves the idea that they are affecting the product, that they are part of your system and they are part of the solution. So surveys, if you show you care enough to get their opinion, you're gonna gain their loyalty this way. So consider all these types of content through this stage, and I've put down there some questions that are gonna help you determine what types of content. Now keep in mind, not everybody in every location is gonna be at different stages. You may find there's lots of people on Facebook who are just at the consideration stage. You may find on Twitter there's a lot of awareness questions being asked out there. So you have to really, this is where you fine tune the listening you're doing and target what types of conversations you want to address. Now we get to the point where, how do we say it? And this is important because, like on a date, if you have all the best things in the world to say, but all you do is mumble, it's not going to go well. So you got to have the best types of messages that's going to appeal to the people you're trying to talk to. And there are a lot of choices. You have to determine what's right for you. Articles, blog posts, those are obvious, I think, to most people. If you have a website, you're thinking about creating these types of content. But you also might want to think about a case study or a testimonial where you can show people how you solved someone else's problem that maybe they could relate to. Video is a great tool for showing your value because you can demonstrate it in living color. And microsites is a small, focused website that can appeal just to one specific customer of yours, and you can provide content that truly addresses them. Remember, at the end of the day, this is about adding value, not vanity. You're not trying to just show how great you are. You're truly trying to offer people some solutions to their problems. So when you focus your content on that, keep in mind, it's not always telling and selling. Sometimes you want to really think about creating engagement in what you're producing. You want to think about solving problems and attracting people. So this all seems maybe daunting. You want to think about how you're going to create those types of content, and it can seem scary, but I have some tips for you. And the first and foremost one is please avoid the mind-numbing wall of text. And you see that frequently these days. In the old days, you used to be able to create a big, long website page with lots and lots of keywords stuffed into it, but that's no longer the current SEO. Right now, you want to write content that's going to speak to the user intent, to readability, to usability. It's becoming more and more important for you to write pieces that people can actually read, and you're writing to the user, the user experience. Here's an example of a user-friendly article that we recently produced. I believe Emily actually wrote this on our blog. And these are some of the tips I would suggest that you use in some of your articles or content. This doesn't just have to pertain to blog posts. Always start off with an interesting feature image. It draws the eyes in. It creates an engagement right off the bat. Use bold headlines that offer a compelling statement that draws you in, that discusses immediately, gives somebody the idea of what they're going to read about. Next, use shorter paragraphs, 2 sentences, 1 or 2 sentences. Break it up, but keep it nice and light because the eye wants to travel. People tend to skim articles at first before they really invest themselves into reading it. And that's also why we like to use subheadings. I recommend you use subheadings in all your content. Sometimes you should be able to read the headline, just read the subheadings, and then that'll basically tell you everything the content's about. So think about breaking up your content this way. And again, it's a scannable piece of content. Images in the body. This is very important. As you write, you want to include images. In this case, it's examples of what she's talking about. In your content, they say about every 300, 350 words, you want to include some images. And that, again, is to give the reader some relief. It'll attract them to continue reading on, and it creates a much better reader-friendly experience. And finally, there's areas where you can emphasize some of the things you're saying by bolding the text. If there's a particular statement that's very important in a paragraph, bold it, emphasize it, pull it out. Again, people are going to find the value one way or another, and so it's important that you position your text, position your content in the best way to give it the most chances for people to read it. I have a few more writing tips here. First of all, telling stories is becoming more and more the norm. And they're finding that the user experience, people are reading stories that draw them in, that show a human side. So have a compelling story, maybe about your brand, maybe about how you solved a problem for somebody in particular. This is relatable, so make your content relatable. Part of being human is also in your content, use I, me, and you. Don't talk about how we help our customers because we're the best. Talk about how I can solve your problem, how I can make life easier today. And finally, add facts and proof. It's always nice to put a statistic in there. Don't just say, we're the best. If you can show why you can help somebody increase their profits and how you've done it for the last 3 years in a row, put that in there. Statistics really, social proof really helps. And finally, and this is a must-do for all pieces of content you offer, calls to action. Every content, video, infographic, always finish with direction for your reader. You always want to give them something to move forward with. Don't just leave them hanging. Give them the next place you want them to go. Do you want them to email us to find out more? Do you want them to buy now, go to our store? Or do you want them to go to another article just to keep reading? So this is a snippet from the blog post we actually wrote for this Lunch and Learn. Come join us for more. In the end, my final words of advice is most users will read only 20% of what you're writing. And that's a fact that Jakob Nielsen, who's a web usability guru, came out with back in 1999. So I got to believe since 1999, that number's probably even shrinking. So my point in saying that is lead with your strongest stuff. Just like on a date, don't wait to share something cool about yourself. Start strong, because people may not get to that final point. So make sure your headline's loaded, you're creating the problem and the solution right off the bat, and you're talking about the best ways you can solve the problems. Video is becoming easier and easier for you to do in-house, and it's also showing on the internet to be a very shareable and usable technique for getting your content across. Some video tips: keep them short and sweet. You don't have to create long form. People are going to give you just about as much attention as you can keep their interest. Short and sweet, start strong, get to the point, and then give them the call to action in the end. Help people overcome challenges. Tutorial videos and demo videos showing how to assemble a product is so valuable to your customers, and they're gonna thank you with their engagement. And putting a video on your About Us page is a phenomenal idea. It shows, if you have a great culture, show them. Show people talking about what you are. Use that opportunity to show the people who are writing this to talk, and you can see the voice, and you can set the tone for your culture. So just a couple of great ideas. This is one, actually, a video we created for the M3 Challenge, which was a complementary piece to the math challenge that Emily described earlier. But it fits basically all those criteria. Short and sweet. It's under 2 minutes, really. It just quickly gets to the point. Next, we're going to go into planning your content, and this is very important because you got to have a game plan. You can't just try and wing it day to day, throw a blog post up. The only way to make this successful is if you put some time into setting a game plan down and staying true to it. It'll create consistency. And if people see that you're creating a consistent voice and tone and posting schedule, they're going to be much more apt to stay with you in your efforts. So what I mean by that is what I call content governance. And governance is kind of a busy word with a plan. It really describes the who, what, and where. Who's making this content in your business? What you're going to write, and when's it going to be posted. You got to have maybe a spreadsheet or a calendar, something that shows how all this comes together, but have a plan and have it documented. And most importantly, you got to have somebody in charge. Somebody needs to drive this train, because that's the only way you can set the tone, make sure there's a consistent voice, make sure there's consistent quality and grammar, and make sure somebody's getting the work done, that they're posting on schedule. Because again, you want to have somebody, you want to be accountable, you want to have somebody stick to this. So to make it easier, you also want to stick to what works. And the top 5 types of shareable content. How-tos, you see those all the time. They offer step-by-step instructions on how to do something. This is all information that's in your heads right now, but it's valuable to your customers. List posts offer a series of informations on a specific topic that people are going to read. They love them because they offer takeaways, little bits and pieces. What posts? They show you developing your value with more depth. Why posts? You pose a problem and you show why you can fix it. And videos we've discussed earlier. The top posts that are shared on social media are list posts and why posts, and really for the reasons I've discussed. List posts, they can be about anything, really. And what I always tell people is you have no idea what you know when it comes to writing content. The things that may seem obvious to you, for example, one of our customers, Mack Trucks, 5 tips for better battery performance. That's probably something that's pretty rudimentary to them. But to the truck drivers out there who want to maximize their uptime, this is a good piece of content. The same goes for this post I believe we did for Cigars International. cigar people want to seem cool. They want to seem like they do it right. So this post, it's a video, but it again shows quick takeaways on what you can do to become a better cigar smoker. Here's an article. Here's your latest article. It's in the center. And here are many ways you can create other types of content that can promote it. Facebook posts, you can take a snippet from that article, post it on Facebook. Twitter, you can do multiple tweets that all relate to the content that you can spread out throughout the week and month. Another blog post, you might have a long form why post and then create a list post that sort of complements it. White papers, some more technical information that might complement it. YouTube videos, take the topic and make a video. And infographics, as you'll see, we also made an infographic out of this piece. And this is it. It's true that Twitter is a great medium, and a big part of it is because you can create a lot of value. It said you can take an article and make up to 20 pieces of content out of that one article, as we did here. You can use statistics from the article, and this is an infographic, but it's the same as any other type of content. So take the topics, take the title and add a variation of a title, make that your tweet. Take a quote from your article and make that a tweet. Share a small snippet of content, but just keep regenerating ideas from that and then offer the link to get people to jump over to your article. It's really about finding ways to get more people, more attraction and more engagement. Finally, you also want to leverage your goods. If you have a great piece of content out there right now, a video that's drawn a lot of people in, a white paper, a blog post, your best blog post, use it. Go back and put the link to your latest article at the bottom of it, like we did in this one. That way, when people are coming into your best piece of content, they're also going to see what you're doing next, and it helps relates your article to what you're doing, and it also keeps it fresh. So, we've done all this content. We've done a great job listening. We've done a great job writing, promoting. Now it's time to savor the moment. Your date's over. You go home, you sit on the couch, have a Dr. Pepper, and you're going to relax and try and think about all the great things that happened on this date. And you're going to think about what went wrong. And all of that's going to go into how you go into the next phase of having another date. And you're going to use the information you learned. So I'm going to hand it over to Emily, and she's going to walk us through the final phase of this, the analysis phase.
So again, this is something that is an incredibly important part of the process, but something that we'll really dive into at the Lunch and Learn in August. But really wanted to leave you with just a couple thoughts and some ways to get started. When you're thinking about how you're going to analyze the content you've created and distributed, you want to revisit those goals from the beginning. So, what did you set out to accomplish? Were you interested in, kind of getting an idea for your reputation online? So once you've created content based on what you're hearing, are you seeing more positive mentions of yourself? Maybe more mentions in general. Maybe you were looking to align with influencers, and hopefully you had some positive engagements. It's something that you can begin to keep track of. And so once metrics are decided on, it really helps to kind of create a baseline report that captures each of those metrics, and then on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis following that, you can continue to revisit, and see where you land. We're in a number of different analytics platforms on a daily basis, making little micro decisions about, which Facebook posts to replicate, maybe places a site to stop running your ad on. But even social media has platform analytics that, are an option for analyzing your efforts. And Facebook Insights is great. This was an example of a post for the M3 challenge. And so, during listening, really got to know their audience, a lot of students who are interested in math, science, looking for scholarship opportunities. And so they create and shared that type of content. And so then, we asked ourselves, maybe where are those students? Saw them on Facebook, and that's where they were sharing those posts. And then, in analyzing the efforts, we're just looking at things like engagement. Are people liking, commenting, clicking through on the links? And then one other opportunity for deciding on the metrics that you're going to analyze is really returning to, your customers and thinking about, again, where they are in that decision-making process. So, if you were to take a look again at Jeff's worksheet, maybe you're talking to customers in the awareness stage, and you created some social posts or some blog content really focusing on brand awareness. So you want to think likes and comments on social media, maybe new users and the average time that people are spending on your site when they came to one of your blog posts. Maybe you're talking to people in the retention stage and you're thinking about maybe, your email marketing strategy. You were offering some incentives that your customers were asking for. Maybe you're working these customers into your content strategy as far as answering some important questions. And so you want to think, maybe minimizing the number of unsubscribes with your email marketing, maybe growing your social audience. So, kind of some different ideas for deciding what's going to be most important for you to be looking at. Which really brings us full circle. So, you start, listen first marketing. You're starting with your listening, deciding on your goals and considerations, and we walk through some tips for listening, and then you decide to create your content. What are you going to say? How are you going to say it? Then you created something of value, so you need to think about how you're going to get it into the hands of the right people. And then analyzing, figuring out what's working, where you can make improvements, and that kind of brings you back to the beginning where you become all ears all over again. So this was our Liquid's Listen First marketing strategy. So hopefully had some valuable takeaways, some tips and tricks to get started. Liquid uses a number of different tools and strategies, and really work with clients to, make sure we're informing not only the content strategy, but just all of your marketing efforts in general. So if you need an extra pair of ears, Jeff and I will be here after the presentation.
So thank you all for coming again. As Emily said earlier, we're happy to stay on and answer any questions you have. We realize some of you have meetings to get to, so if you leave, please feel free to pack up and walk out. But we're happy to hang in here and answer questions. A couple final resources. We have our blog at liquidint.com//blog. And then we also have a few resources here if you want to jot down that have to do with social listening. So maybe you want to copy a couple of these things down. Again, thank you all for coming. We have really enjoyed speaking to you about something we truly care about. Thank you very much.